Good morning. I'm Richard Schramm, the service coordinator, your guide to today's service. Welcome to this caring, sharing community on this cool and clear Sunday, October 27th. Whoever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Whomever you love, we welcome you. We welcome you to the North Chapel, where we aspire to be a congregation that nurtures the growth and supports the needs of its members, sustains a strong spiritual life within a loving church community, and seeks to have a positive impact on the world around us. Special welcome for visitors. If any of you are a visitor and up for it and would like to share your name and where you're from, we'd love to hear from you. And yes, please.
Claudia, and I happen to know the speaker this morning, so I came to visit. And I live in West Norwich. I work at the inn sometimes on weekends.
Great, thank you. Welcome. Any others here? Okay. If you are visiting, please, and you'd like, you can sign the guest book in the back of the sanctuary. Please turn off your cell phones. And Tatum is here today. We'll be with the children for a spiritual exploration. A couple announcements. First, this is the last day to sign up for covenant groups, and so be sure, if you're interested in the covenant groups, sign up today. Otherwise, you'll miss out on a great experience. I can guarantee it. Diane has an announcement.
This will be a participatory announcement. I will cue you when you have the word to say. Back by popular demand and with apologies to Edgar Allan Poe. In my dream at midnight dreary, where I wandered weak and weary o'er these stately Woodstock sidewalks, famous from forgotten lore, while I plodded, really napping, suddenly I started tapping, found myself then gently rapping at this chapel door. Just a visitor, I uttered, tapping at the chapel door, only me and nothing more. Distinctly I remember, it was in a bleak November. This dream filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, just a visitor, entreating entrance at this chapel door, an old choir director knocking at the chapel door, this it is and nothing more. Presently, my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. Sir, said I, or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore. Energy was sapping, and so gently I came tapping, and then faintly I came rapping at this chapel door, not surprised you scarcely heard me. Then I opened wide the door, darkness there, and nothing more. Deep into that dimness peering, long I stood there gasping, fearing what I saw was sad and rotten, disarray from door to door, but the silence was unbroken and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was my whispered word. Hello? This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word, hello? Merely this, and nothing more. Feeling brave, I stepped to enter, walking forward to the center, turned and saw our dear Ann Winia, treasurer in days of yore. In her hand she held an apple, seated in the darkened chapel over by the back east window, near the downstairs far rear door, sitting on a faded cushion over by that exit door, perched she sat, and nothing more. Then this treasurer, beguiling, turned my sad face into smiling by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance she wore. Though this place be dark and frightening, please, I said, Anne, be enlightening. Tell me of the tragic story wreaking havoc evermore. What has happened to this chapel once so lovingly cared for? Quoth Ann Winia, nevermore. Then the bursar, sitting lonely on the faded pew, spoke only that one word, as if her soul in that one word she did impart. Nothing further than she uttered, not a feather downward fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, worry not, if speak you can't, I will leave you to your silence, peace and quiet I must grant. Then Aunt Winia rose to rant. Let me tell you, Anne then started, congregants have long departed. Who's to blame them? Look around, everything has fallen down. Though the heat vents groan and choke, no warmth will come. It smells like smoke and deathly things of creepy nature, ugly, nasty, noxious vapors, faint remnants of past hash dinners, or long decaying bingo winners. The bell, made true by Paul Revere, is silent, maybe cracked, I fear. Oh, the bell, 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 what a tale its terror tells of despair. But that's a poem not meant for here. Out in front, the weeds grow thicker, crabgrass, knotweed, burdock, prickers. The permafrost garden is now overgrown, where leaves long unraked have finally blown. The organ, made by Hutchings and Plaisted, has suffered most deeply and is utterly wasted. Pipes are full of nuts and seeds, plugging air holes in the reeds. No song is heard, not voice nor ditty. No concerts played, it's such a pity. The children here left down the street. I miss their pitter-pat of feet. Leon, you ask, and the Holy Ghost? They caught the last train for the coast. The day the chapel died. The paint on the walls, it is cracked and it's peeling. Fissures reach clear through the bulk of the ceiling. The gazebo, it floated off nigh late last spring, given that flooding's a regular thing. Joanne left for pastures much richer and greener. Her absence left everyone surly and meaner. The copier, it went kerflooey, oozing out some liquids gooey. The phones unanswered long stopped ringing. The postman only bills is bringing. The clock is stuck at 10:30. Sunday morn won't come again. The choir dispersed to the edge of the earth. The altos to China, sopranos to Perth. The basses and tenors had long since departed, shaking the group to the core of its worth. No dancers, no speakers, no spirit of life. The ants in the kitchen are woefully rife. The church elevator is canted and breech, and the cab between floors is just out of reach. I recognize you, Anne said to me. You look a lot older, but much more carefree. You were around back when things were still good, when everything functioned the way that it should, when people supported our place and our work, a haven to go in this world so berserk. Those were the days when we valued our chapel, shiny and healthy, robust, like my apple. Fierce social justice and climate defender, Woodstock community thought us such splendor. Now we are rotting and wasted away. That's the sad truth at the end of the day. A phrase so important I oft think upon, you don't realize what you've got till it's gone. And that was the end of Anne's passionate shout. She turned and sat down like her spark had gone out. In my dream at midnight dreary, where I wandered weak and weary, or these stately Woodstock sidewalks famous from my memories great, when I plodded, really napping, and I was suddenly tapping, followed then by gently rapping at this chapel gate. What had happened here, I wondered, right behind the chapel gate? Wake me from this nightmare's fate. And Anne Winia, never flitting, still is sitting on the pew with faded cushion, just beside the back wall edge. Is there no hope for North Chapel, I did yell. Anne, must we grapple? She looked down and bit her apple by the eastern window ledge, and I chuckled at her answer that she offered near the ledge. Quoth Anne Winia, one word, pledge. Thank you. There are colored envelopes in your pews for pledging. And if you have any questions, Laird is here to answer them. Thank you.
Any other announcements from folks? Can you top that one? See the order of service and the North Chapel website for other announcements. Our minister, Leon Dunkley, is away. Lucinda Garthwaite is giving the reflection this morning. It's entitled Cool Head, Warm Heart. Lucinda's bio is in the order of service. Here are some highlights. She's a 30-year Unitarian Universalist, a former teacher at the University of New Hampshire and Goddard College. I had the pleasure of working with her when she was the academic dean and on the board of trustees at Goddard. She is a wonderful soul. She's the founder and director of the Institute for Liberatory Innovation, a nonprofit with a mission to generate and implement innovative strategies so that more people thrive in an ever more peaceful world. The ILI builds innovative solutions to create liberatory environments where compassion leads to action, curiosity inspires connection, and accountability ensures sustained progress. She's the author of this really neat book called Bumbling Humans. Bumbling humans, folks, we know that, and she acknowledges that. Reflections on Liberatory Change. And Lucinda has other copies of this book if you're interested in talking to her about it. She'll be available after the service.
Hi. I'm so grateful to be here. Richard, thank you for that introduction. It's so good to see you. And Leon, thank you for inviting me. And Anne, thank you for being an amazing host from like last March to now, through snowstorms and COVID, and third time is a charm. Diane in the choir, thank you for that music. It's just gone right through me. Thank you. Oh, and that poem. Oh, man. So I do love those. I love all the principles. I do love those first two, though. I like to think that they drive my days. But honestly, that has not always been the case. Some of my colleagues here know that to be true. I believe those things. I believe in justice and equal rights and fair treatment in the context of redressing historical wrongs. I believe, at least I think I believe, that every person has worth in the world. I believe everyone gets to live with dignity, should live with dignity, that is, not be denigrated or demeaned. It's the right of every human. When Reverend Rebecca Ann Parker writes in the UA website that all the dimensions of our being carry the potential to do good, I nod. I feel like I'm home. My mother was my first teacher in all of this. She taught us compassion in what she called a grassroots Christian tradition. It wasn't suffering with, it was working so that others didn't suffer. It was not causing suffering. She instilled in us a sense of responsibility to redress injustice through her work in the community. My mom stood shoulder to shoulder with Black mothers in 60s suburban New Jersey to integrate nursery schools and Girl Scouts. When the new town library went up in a place that was totally inaccessible to neighborhoods of color, my mother led the effort to get a paved bike path through the woods and fields so that everyone could get there. Throughout my life, I've tried to follow her example. I've been diligent about my own bias and ignorance, knowing I am vulnerable to both. How could I not be? I only have my own singular experience through which to understand the world. And no matter how hard I work to expand it, through reading and exposure to culture, listening to experiences of others, I'm limited by my perspective. And I confess, though, it's felt downright righteous to be diligent. And how easily righteousness can morph into scorn for those that take a different path. That's a strong word, scorn. And it's inarguably at odds, I think, with the UU principle that every person has worth in the world. That every person deserves my compassion. Practicing that is way harder than saying it. Practicing our principles, I think, means I may reject behaviors and ideas, but not people. It means I can speak of and work to redress historical inequity, but not ascribe any quality to any group of people that shares some characteristic like race, gender, sex, or religion, and has benefited from that inequity. Because that's bigotry, no matter where it's aimed. You see how this can get dicey? Last spring, I worked with the leadership of an arts nonprofit to rethink their approach to equity. As my colleagues and I do every time we approach this subject, I began by suggesting that bigoted behavior, including speech, can absolutely not be tolerated. Nobody argued with that. These were really earnest people. They were very serious in their desire to create an organization where everyone could thrive. They were really thinking about race and class and gender. But then, someone told an old white guy joke. And everybody laughed. And I didn't. I stopped and I said, no, really, no bigotry. None. That was hard for people to swallow. It's really easy to redirect scorn onto people who have benefited from historic inequity and still do. It's so tempting to denigrate those who every day in public ways flagrantly denigrate others. I've done both in my professional and public life, even though I can hear my mother saying, she called me this, I'm telling you, but don't tell anybody else, Cinderella ho-ho. Two wrongs don't make a right. Even though I reread those first two principles, they're on a card in front of my desk, and see very clearly that denigrating others violates those beliefs, my own beliefs, still I have done it. Despite the moral compass of which I've become, I'm not proud of this, proud. I'm proud of my moral compass. It was too tempting not to denigrate others. You know what finally brought me up short? Strategy. Strategy, as I understand it, is clear-headedly mapping out actions that will lead to a desired outcome. My desired outcome, and I imagine you share this because you're sitting here in these pews, is liberatory change. I mean a river of liberation so more people thrive and more peace forever. More and more and more and more. It's never done. There's not a period at the end of that sentence. Because people bumble, but that's another sermon. Throughout the course of, as morally right as our principles are, as good as it makes me feel to believe in them, as much as I feel at home in a community that shares those beliefs, the bottom line is that we're out of time for any behavior that doesn't contribute to that kind of change. I'm pretty convinced the old ways, the finger-shaking ways, don't work. And I don't have any more time for that. Strictly aligning my behavior with our principles doesn't mean that I have to tolerate violent rhetoric. It doesn't mean I have to be nice. It doesn't mean I look away from injustice. In fact, it means the opposite. It means a fierce and disciplined commitment to nonviolent resistance. Throughout the course of human history, nonviolent strategy has won the day more often than not. Erica Chenoweth and her colleagues at Harvard Kennedy School have demonstrated this through painstaking exploration of resistance movements as far back as the 1400s. Chenoweth started that inquiry as a skeptic. She began her career in the military, and she said many times that she was very surprised by the results of her research. She's also said many times that nonviolent strategy requires imagination, discipline, and courage. It's in many ways harder than military strategy, but it's almost always more effective. It may seem like a leap from UU principles to the difference between nonviolent and military strategy, but I don't think it's that much of a leap. Military strategy and much of activism until now is based on the idea of punishment. That's way oversimplified, but here it is. If I hurt you enough, or threaten to, you will stop hurting me. Nonviolent strategy is based on the ideas of non-cooperation, undermining repression, reducing fear, and lifting up compassion, creating opportunities to thrive that draw people away from the temptation of violent and authoritarian answers to social challenges. But Chenoweth is right, it's hard. It's hard because it requires stepping back from self-righteousness. It requires discipline. Now, I understand that Leon has paved the way for singing from this pulpit, am I right? Thank you, my friend. Okay, I'm gonna sing a few lines from a really old James Taylor song. It's called Lonesome Road. Here's how it goes. Walk down that lonesome road all by yourself. Don't turn your head back over your shoulder, and only stop to rest yourself when the silver moon is shining high above the trees. If I had stopped to listen once or twice, if I had closed my mouth and opened my eyes, if I had cooled my head and warmed my heart, I'd not be on this road tonight. I've been singing that song for 40 years. I thought I understood its message well. Enough. Don't focus too much on your own troubles or on the past. Be quiet more often. Don't drink too much caffeine, Lucinda. Listen carefully to others. Do that tirelessly, even past the end of the day. I got it. The need to keep a warm and open heart. I understood lonesomeness in the song as literal. Being too self-focused will make me alone. And metaphorical. A lonesome road is a road without community, without connection. It all seems to fit very well with those first two UU principles. Holding fast to those beliefs requires a warm heart, but it also requires a cool head, and that's where strategy comes in. I have spent much of my life happily nestled in communities like these that believe in equity and justice. I've aligned my professional life with those ideals. I've marched and organized for them. It has felt really good to be part of that. I dare say it has felt downright righteous. But that hasn't kept me from the temptation to put people down who don't believe as I do. It hasn't kept me from acting on that temptation. I carried signs that I now understand were bigoted. I have to ask myself, have my actions aligned with the belief that every person is worthy of respect and dignity? Have I really believed that everyone deserves to thrive? If I'm being honest, I don't think I did. And I don't think that approach to change has worked, not in any enduring way. I think I've contributed to people who think differently than I do feeling afraid. They are afraid, partly because of my actions. I think they think I will hurt them. I think they don't deserve to thrive. That's just not good strategy. Because now they've geared up to hurt me back. Now their fear has been weaponized by those who truly believe not everyone deserves to thrive. Brian Stevenson is the founder of the Equal Justice Initiative. If you don't know about it, just Google it. Some of you may know his work through his book, Just Mercy, which was also made into a movie about his life. Stevenson has dedicated his life to ending mass incarceration and punishment in the United States, to challenging racial and economic injustice, and protecting basic human rights for the most vulnerable in society. In other words, Brian Stevenson is a fierce advocate for liberatory change, and he knows that can only happen with disciplined, nonviolent, non-punitive strategy. He has said, quote, "We ought to find the courage to acknowledge the wrongfulness of things so that we can then embrace what's right, what's corrective, what's redemptive, what's restorative." And he makes it very clear. He means that for everyone. Stevenson has also said, quote, "It's necessary to recognize that we all need mercy, we all need justice, and perhaps we all need some measure of unmerited grace." We believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every person. We know that belief is inextricably entwined with our belief in justice, equity, and compassion. We don't all have to be public activists to act on that belief. It can happen in daily life, committing to compassion, not wanting others to suffer, not causing suffering. Committing to nonviolence, behaving in ways that make it possible for others to thrive. Refraining from demeaning and denigrating speech, even writing, as tempting as that may be. Because it's just not right. It's not just right. It's not just morally right. This is not just my moral compass speaking, which is a flawed moral compass, because I'm a flawed human being. This is an urgently necessary strategy to drive change in the direction that I trust all of us here want to see. More people thriving in ever more peace. It's hard, and it works. I don't have enough time to tell you how many people in so many disciplines have shown over and over and over again that punitive actions, you are less worthy than I, and I am going to make that hard for you. Punitive actions don't work. That makes being a Unitarian Universalist hard, and it makes it real. It requires a warm heart, and it requires a cool head. It requires offering some measure of unmerited grace, especially to those with whom we vehemently disagree, to those whose belief actually pose existential threats. I am afraid right now. I imagine some of you are too. So are they. There's no more time for anything less than doing what works. And nonviolent strategy, a cool head, not just a warm heart, works. It always has. Thank you for the opportunity to think aloud about this. I'm not sure I'm right. I am sure we've got to find ways to do things differently. I think nonviolence offers a way. Personal, everyday nonviolence. Checking myself when it's tempting to denigrate anyone. In my quiet personal life, on my social media feeds, in my work, it's hard because we live in a punitive world. We live in a world that says, if you're gonna hurt me, I'm gonna hurt you first. It doesn't work. It won't get us where we wanna be. That's why I need a cool head, because the warm heart just makes me seek out communities where I feel loved and together with people. It doesn't necessarily make me be strategic, make me say, Lucinda, stop. I have to be careful of a righteous heart. The warm, righteous heart. I have to keep a cool head. This isn't written down. Often when I speak, people think I'm being warm and fuzzy. I'm not. I'm feeling fierce about this. There really is no more time to behave in ways that don't work. I implore you to consider doing things differently. And I am so grateful for the chance to think with you and to be here today. So let's sing a hymn together. And then I'll read some words from Brian Stevenson. And then I'll be happy to meet you all downstairs. Thank you. Here's Brian Stevenson. We're at a time when it's just become so easy to judge people in really harsh and extreme ways. And even people of faith have been pulled into this habit, this instinct for condemning others who don't share their beliefs and views, for reducing people to their first act. I've always been struck, Brian Stevenson says, by that parable, that scripture, that story where Jesus encounters the woman who's been caught in adultery. What's powerful about it, no one says, oh, she didn't do it. It's not an innocent story. And those who are there to judge her say that the law says we should stone her to death. The story goes on that Jesus said, well, let he of you who is without sin cast the first stone. And they're convinced by that because they know that none of them is sinless. And they one by one put their stones down and they walk away. It's a powerful story about mercy and redemption and grace. And what I've realized, Brian Stevenson says, is in this era, I don't think our righteous would put their stones down. I think that we have too many people who would still cast the stones. They feel insulated from the hypocrisy and judgment that implies. And I think it's incumbent on some of us to intervene, to catch the stones. It doesn't mean that those vulnerable should be condemned. It just means some of us are going to have to be stone catchers. And that's the idea I've come to embrace, Stevenson says, that just because people won't recognize what the right and just thing is to do, that it's not right and just to cast those stones, doesn't mean that's the end of the struggle. We have to stand up. We have to step in front of those who are vulnerable, and we have to catch those stones. Amen, and blessed be. Thank you.